Ancient education system of India. You must have heard or read that travelers from various regions having different climates and cultures began to visit parts of India from early times. To them, India was a land of wonder. The fame of Indian culture, wealth, religions, philosophies, art, architecture, as well as its educational practices, had spread far and wide. The education system of ancient times was regarded as a source for the knowledge, traditions, and practices that guided and encouraged humanity. Salient features of ancient education system. From the time of Rigveda onwards, our ancient education system evolved over the period and focused on the holistic development of individual by taking care of both the inner and outer self. The system focused on moral, physical, spiritual, and intellectual aspects of life. It emphasized on values such as humility, truthfulness, discipline, self reliance, and respect for all creations. Students were taught to appreciate the balance between human beings and nature. Teaching and learning followed the tenets of Vedas and Upanishads, fulfilling duties towards self, family, and society, thus encompassing all aspects of life. Education system focused both on learning and physical development. In other words, the emphasis was on healthy mind and healthy body. You can see that education in India has a heritage of being pragmatic, achievable, and complementary to life. Sources of education. The ancient system of education was the education of the Vedas, Brahmanas, Upanishads, and Dharma Sutras. You must have heard the names of Aryabhat, Panini, Katyayana, and Patanjali. Their writings and the medical treatises of Charaka and Sushruta were also some of the sources of learning. Distinction was also drawn between Shastras and Kavyas. Sources of learning were drawn from various disciplines such as Itihas, Anvikshiki, Mimamsa, Shilpashastra, Arthashastra, Varta, and Dhanurvidya. Physical education too was an important curricular area, and pupils participated in Krida, Vyayam Prakara, Dhanurvidya for acquiring martial skills and Yog Sadhana, among others. The gurus and their pupils worked conscientiously together to become proficient in all aspects of learning. In order to assess pupils' learning, Shastrartha learned debates were organized. Pupils at an advanced stage of learning guided younger pupils. There also existed the system of pure learning like you have group or peer work. Ancient education system in India, a way of life. In ancient India, both formal and informal ways of education system existed. Indigenous education was imparted at home in temples, pathshalas, stalls, chatuspadi, and gurukul. There were people in homes, villages, and temples who guided young children in imbibing pious ways of life. Temples were also the centers of learning and took interest in promotion of knowledge of our ancient system. Students went to viharas and universities for higher knowledge. Teaching was largely oral and students remembered and meditated upon what was taught in the class. Gurukuls, also known as ashramas, were the residential places of learning. Many of these were named after the sages. Situated in forest in serene and peaceful surroundings, hundreds of students used to learn together in gurukuls. Women too had access to education during the early Vedic period. Among the prominent women Vedic scholars, we find reference to Maitreyi, Vishwambara, Apla, Gargi, and Lopamudra, to name a few. During that period, the gurus and their shishyas lived together, helping each other in day to day life. The main objective was to have complete learning, leading a disciplined life, and realizing one's inner potential. Students lived away from their homes for years together till they achieved their goals. The Gurukul was also the place where the relationship of the Guru and Shishya strengthened with time. While pursuing their education in different disciplines like history, art, of debate, law, medicine, the emphasis was not only on the outer dimensions of the discipline but also on enriching inner dimensions of the personality. Many monasteries, viharas were set up for monks and nuns to meditate, debate, and discuss with the learned for their quest for knowledge during this period. Around these viharas, other educational centers of higher learning developed, which attracted students from China, Korea, Tibet, Burma, Ceylon, Java, Nepal, and other distant countries. Viharas and universities. The Jataka tales accounts given by Xuanzang and I Qing, Chinese scholars, as well as other sources, tell us that kings and society took active interest in promoting education. As a result, many famous educational centers came into existence. Among the most notable universities that evolved during this period were situated at Takshashila, Nalanda, Vallabhi, Vikramshila, Odantapuri, and Jagdala. These universities developed in connection with viharas. Those at Banaras, Navadip, and Kanchi developed in connection with temples and became centers of community life in the places where they were situated. These institutions catered to the needs of advanced level students. Such students joined the centers of higher learning and developed their knowledge by mutual discussions and debates with renowned scholars. Not only this, there was also occasional summoning by a king to a gathering in which the scholars of country of various viharas and universities would meet, debate, and exchange their views. In this section, we will give you glimpses of two universities of the ancient period. These universities were considered among the best centers of learning in the world. These have been recently declared heritage sites by United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization UNESCO. Takshashila or Taxila. In ancient times, Takshashila was a noted center for learning, including religious and teachings of Buddhism for several centuries. It continued to attract students from around the world until its destruction in the 5th century. It was known for its higher education, and the curriculum comprised of study of ancient scriptures, law, medicine, astronomy, military science, and the 18 shilpas or arts. Takshashila became famous as a place of learning due to its teachers' expertise. Among its noted pupils were the legendary Indian grammarian Panini. He was an expert in language and grammar and authored one of the greatest works on grammar called Ashtadhyayi. Jivaka, one of the most renowned physicians in ancient India, and Chanakya, also known as Kautilya, a skilled exponent of statecraft, both studied here. Students came to Takshashila from Kashi, Koshala, Magadha, and also from other countries in spite of the long and arduous journey they had to undertake. Takshashila was an ancient Indian city which is now in northwestern Pakistan. It is an important archaeological site, and the UNESCO declared it to be a World Heritage Site in 1980. Its fame rested on the university where Chanakya is said to have composed his Arthashastra. Archaeologist Alexander Cunningham discovered its ruins in the mid 19th century. Role of teacher. Teachers had complete autonomy in all aspects from selection of students to designing their syllabi. When the teacher was satisfied with the performance of the students, the course concluded. He would admit as many students as he liked and taught what his students were taking to learn. Debate and discussions were the primary methods of teaching. Teachers were assisted by their advanced level students. Nalanda University. Nalanda, when Xuanzang visited, it was called Nala and was a center of higher learning in various subjects. The university attracted scholars from the different parts of the country as well as world. The Chinese scholars I King and Xuanzang visited Nalanda in 7th century. They have given vivid accounts of Nalanda. They have noted that as many as 100 discourses happened on a daily basis in a variety of disciplines through the methods of debate and discussions. Xuanzang himself became a student of Nalanda to study Yoga Shastra. He has mentioned that the chancellor of Nalanda, Shilabhadra, was the highest living authority in yoga. The courses of study offered by Nalanda University covered a wide range, almost the entire circle of knowledge then available. Students at Nalanda studied the Vedas and were also trained in fine arts, medicine, mathematics, astronomy, politics, and the art of warfare. The ancient Nalanda was a center of learning from 5th century to 12th century, located in present-day Rajgir, Bihar, India. Nalanda was one of the oldest universities of the world, and UNESCO declared the ruins of Nalanda Mahavira a World Heritage Site. The new Nalanda University is envisaged as a center of intercivilizational dialogue. Role of community. At that time, knowledge was considered sacred and no fee was charged. Contributions towards education were considered the highest form of donation. All members of the society contributed in some form or the other. Financial support came from rich merchants, wealthy parents, and society. Besides gifts of buildings, the universities received gifts of land. This form of free education was also prevalent in other ancient universities like Vallabhi, Vikramshila, and Jagaddala. At the same time, in the south of India, Agraharas served as centers of learning and teaching. South Indian kingdoms also had other cultural institutions known as Ghatika and Brahmapuri. A Ghatika was a center of learning including religion and was small in size, and Agrahara was a bigger institution, a whole settlement of learned Brahmins with its own powers of government and was maintained by generous donations from society. Temples, Math, Jain basaris, and Buddhist viharas also existed as other sources of learning during this period. Continuation of Indian education. The Indian education system continued in the form of ashram, in temples, and as indigenous schools. During the medieval period, maktabas and madrasas became part of the education system. During the pre colonial period, the indigenous education flourished in India. This was an extension of the formal system that had taken roots earlier. This system was mostly religious and spiritual form of education. Tolls in Bengal, Pathshalas in Western India, Chatuspadis in Bihar, and similar schools existed in other parts of India. Local resources via donations supported education. References in text and memoirs inform that villagers also supported education in southern India. As we understand, the ancient education system of India focused on the holistic development of the students, both inner and outer self, thus preparing them for life. Education was free and not centralized. Its foundations were laid in the rich cultural traditions of India, thereby helping in the development of physical, intellectual, spiritual, and artistic aspects of life holistically. Our present day education system has a lot to learn from the ancient education system of India. Therefore, the stress is being laid on connecting learning to the world outside the school. Today, educationists recognize the role and importance of multilingual and multicultural education, thereby connecting the ancient and the traditional knowledge with contemporary learning. Question answers. Why were travelers attracted towards India? Most travelers were attracted towards India because of the fame of Indian culture, its wealth, religions, philosophies, art, and architecture, along with its educational practices that had spread far and wide across the world. The Indian education system of ancient time was considered a rich source of knowledge, traditions, and practices that helped in guiding and encouraging humanity as a whole. For travelers, India was a land of great wonder. What were the sources of ancient education system? The different sources of the ancient education system were the education imparted by the Vedas, Brahmanas, Upanishads, and Dharma Sutras, the writings of Aryabhatta, Panini, Katyayan, and Patanjali, and the medical treatises of Charaka and Sushruta were also some of the rich sources of learning. Besides, the sources of learning were from various disciplines and such as Itihas, Anviksiki, Mimamsa, Shilpashastra, Arthashastra, Varta, and Dhanurvidya. What were the features of educational system in ancient India? Some of the features of educational system in ancient India included the following. Teaching and learning followed the tenets of Vedas and Upanishads, fulfilling duties towards self, family, society, thus encompassing all aspects of life. The education system focused both on learning and physical development. The emphasis of education was on maintaining a healthy mind and healthy body. Education in India has a heritage of being pragmatic, achievable, and complementary to life. What was the role of Guru in pupils' lives? In ancient times, the Gurus and their pupils worked conscientiously together to become proficient in all aspects of learning. Shastrartha were organized to assess pupils' learning. Pupils at an advanced stage of learning guided younger pupils just as we have peer groups to share knowledge among ourselves. During that period, the gurus and their shishyas lived together and they would help each other in everyday life. The main objective was to have end to end learning, lead a disciplined life, and realize a learner's inner potential. Students would live away from their homes for many years until their goals were fully achieved. The Gurukul was the place where the Guru Shishya relationship became stronger with time. While pursuing their education in different disciplines like history, art, law, medicine, etc., the emphasis was not just on the outer dimensions of the discipline, it also enriched the inner dimensions of the personality. Where did the nuns and monks receive their education? The nuns and monks received their education from various monasteries or vihars, which were educational centers of art and learning. These centers were mainly set up to meditate, discuss, and debate with the learned to satisfy their quest for knowledge during the ancient period. What is Panini known for? Panini was a legendary Indian Sanskrit grammarian who was an expert in language and grammar and authored one of the greatest works on grammar called Ashtadhyayi. He was a revered scholar in ancient India who is considered as the father of linguistics, who have a detailed scientific theory of phonetics, morphology, and phonology. Which university did Xuanzang and Ai Qing study at? The Chinese scholars Ai Qing and Xuanzang visited Nalanda in the 7th century. When Xuanzang visited it, Nalanda was called Nala, which was a center of higher learning in various subjects. Which subject did Xuanzang study in India? Xuanzang studied Yoga Shastra, grammar, logic, and Sanskrit during his time at the Nalanda University. How did society help the education of the students? During ancient times, knowledge was considered sacred and hence no fees was charged for imparting it. The contributions towards education from the wealthy were regarded as the highest form of donation. Different people contributed differently. Financial support mostly came from rich merchants, wealthy parents, and society. Apart from gifts of buildings, the universities would also receive gifts of land from wealthy people. The free form of education was mostly prevalent in ancient universities such as Vallabhi, Vikramshila, and Jagadala. Which salient features of the ancient education system of India made it globally renowned? Some of the salient features of the ancient education system of India that made it globally renowned are listed here. As our ancient education system evolved over a period of time, it focused on holistic development of the individual, which included taking care of both the inner and the outer self. The ancient system focused on spiritual, physical, moral, and intellectual aspects of life. It emphasized on values such as truthfulness, humility, self-reliance, discipline, and respect for all creative works. Students were taught to appreciate and strike a balance between human beings and nature. Teachers taught and followed the tenets of Vedas and Upanishads, which mentioned fulfilling one's responsibilities towards self, family, and society, covering all the aspects of life. Why do you think students from other countries came to India to study at that time? In ancient times, students from China, Korea, Tibet, Burma, Ceylon, Java, Nepal, and other distant countries were attracted to India for studies as India was considered a land of wonder with a rich source of knowledge that had educational centers of higher learning. Various monasteries or viharas were set up for monks and nuns to meditate, debate, and discuss with the learned to satisfy their quest for knowledge during the period. Besides, Takshashila was also a noted center of learning that included religious teachings of Buddhism for several centuries. It continued to attract students from around the world until its destruction in 5th century. Why is education considered a way of life? Education is considered a way of life because in ancient India there was the existence of both formal and informal modes of education system. Indigenous education was imparted at home, gurukuls, stalls, temples, pathshalas and chatuspadis. People in homes, villages and temples would guide young children and help them in imbibing the pious and ideal way of life. What do you understand by holistic education? Holistic education refers to the development of the inner and outer self of an individual, which prepares them for life. Although the ancient education system in India was free, it was not centralized. Its foundations were mostly laid in the rich cultural traditions of India that helped in the development of the physical, spiritual, intellectual, and artistic aspects of life holistically. Why do you think Takshashila and Nalanda have been declared heritage sites? Takshashila was an ancient Indian city that was declared to be a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1980 because it was considered an important archaeological site and a place of core learning due to teachers' expertise. Being one of the oldest universities of the world, Nalanda was a center of learning from 5th century to 12th century. UNESCO declared the ruins of Nalanda Mahavira a World Heritage Site.